Good afternoon. Hello. Thank you for being here today for the FEDORA Digital Prize panel, exploring opportunities for digital creativity. We would like to first thank the IMZ for inviting us to take part in the Golden Prague Film Television Festival, and of course for the organizers as well of the Golden Prague Television Festival. And before I pass on the word to our moderator, Peter Maniura, and to our speakers, I'd like to present you briefly FEDORA, that you might already know, but just in a few words. Well, this is me. FEDORA is a non-for-profit organization based in the Palais Garnier in Paris. And since 2013, we have been supporting new creations in opera and dance. So at first it started as a competition for new creations in opera and ballet, and it is today the largest competition of opera and ballet in the world. And just a brief, I'm sorry, I have to stay close to the microphone. A brief introduction to our ecosystem, let's say, and how we work. We are co-funded by public and private organizations. So in part, we are supported by the Creative Europe program of the European Commission. And on the other hand, we also work with private companies and individual donors who support us through our prizes, but also other of our activities. And indeed, over the past 10 years, because we are celebrating our 10 years this year, we have supported over 75 cutting-edge creations, and we have raised in total, thanks to private and public sectors, over 6.5 million euros for these new creations in opera, dance, and beyond, and supported more than 2,000 artists and creatives through these projects as well. And our main funding programs, the way we support these new creations is through two main programs. The Next Stage grants, which were launched last year in collaboration with Opera Europa. And the goal of Next Stage is to support change behind and beyond the stage. So in the production, the administration of opera houses, dance companies. So really new tools, new ways that can improve the way things are done in the production, in administration, and so on, of opera houses and dance companies. And so thanks to the support of a private foundation, in 2020, we awarded 5 projects with 250,000 euros in total. And then, on the other hand, we have the FEDORA Prizes Biennale, which has been the core of FEDORA since the beginning. It started with 2 categories, opera and ballet. And today we have 4 categories. So we have the FEDORA Opera Prize, which awards a new creation in opera with 100,000 euros. And then we have the FEDORA van Cleef & Arpels Dance Prize for a new choreographic creation, which awards as well 100,000 euros for a new choreographic creation. And then since 2019, we have the FEDORA Education Prize, which is all about social impact and projects that connect opera and dance to new audiences. So it can be children, it can be refugees, it can be whichever public and audience this program wants to reach out to. And finally, we have the FEDORA Digital Prize, which was launched in collaboration with the IMZ in 2020, and in 2020. And it is, yes, we'll get into more details now, but otherwise, something important to mention, as I was saying, we are supported also by private companies, and each one of the categories of the prizes is supported by a different organization. And for the FEDORA Digital Prize, we aim at encouraging artistic innovation in the sector, but also reaching to new audiences with different tools and through interdisciplinary collaboration between different organizations, different professionals. And this category is supported by Kearney, the global consulting firm. And we work, as I said, in collaboration with the IMZ for the sourcing of projects, and also, of course, we have our jury chair, who is Peter Maniura. And before, yes, I pass on the word to Peter, just an overview of the 3 projects that are here present, the representatives of the 3 winning projects of the FEDORA Digital Prize. So in 2020, we had Laïla, immersive installation by the Finnish National Opera and Ballet. In 2021, Out of the Ordinary by the Irish National Opera. And finally, the Sound Voice project winner this year by Britten, Pears Arts and Sound Voice. And now I will pass the word to Peter.
Diandra, thanks very much. Thanks for coming, everyone. It's important to mention that this is a partnership, as Diandra says, with the IMZ, specifically the IMZ Academy, which I'm the director of. And you might well ask, what are the qualifications of the IMZ and myself personally for doing this, along with Katarina Jeschke, who's the Secretary General of the IMZ and who's been on the jury with me ever since the beginning. Well, obviously, we're an international media organisation dedicated to the performing arts across all media, principally to begin with television, but now all media. I am a television man by training, a filmmaker, a director, a producer. I've also been in arts management, but critically, I set up 2 digital services, a collaboration between the Arts Council of England and the BBC called The Space, which was to do in a way what this prize does, which is to encourage new creations through digital in the world of the arts. When I started that in 2012, some organisations didn't even have websites. Shows you how far we've come in that time. And subsequently BBC Arts Online. And I think the exciting and the critical thing for us is that we have to reach audiences in new and different ways. I think digital is a bit like a jigsaw still. We've all got some of the pieces. I don't think anybody's got quite the whole picture. And I think what this is going to be about is, as these 3 fantastic projects will show, it's about piecing together that image and telling a story in new and different ways. It's wonderful that we've got Miia and James and Thomas in faraway London. And without further ado, let's start with Miia Lallukka and Laïla, the first winner. Let's hear about your journey, Miia.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Like I just said before, it's been because we won the FEDORA Prize already in 2020, and ever since I've been making many operas. So it was a thrill to go back and follow my own footsteps, like what did we do, what did we think we were doing, and what did we do, and how that came out. And so it's been a lovely journey going down the memory lane. I think I'm gonna start with a video where the father of the idea, a composer and conductor, Esa-Pekka Salonen, will tell you about Laïla. So please.
I think the very initial conversation I had with Lili Paasikivi, who is the artistic director of the Finnish National Opera and Ballet, was several years ago, and I said I would like to do something within the organization that uses new technology and basically plays with the elements of an opera house, but without quite being an opera, and so on.
Well, Laïla is an immersive artwork. It's an environment, it's a space. It's also kind of an AI entity, if you want to think about it that way. It's the product of our 1 year of hustling. If you should actually rebuild opera, you can't rip it down more than we've done it. So it's missing all of the traditions of opera. It's missing a person on stage. There's no conductor. You don't sit. You're not a member of the audience who has a comfortable bench. You're actually going in to the experience, and then it's evolving with you. So it's hierarchy free in a way.
I guess what is really special about it for us is this highly multidisciplinary collaboration that we have here. So we are a multidisciplinary team. We have designers and technologists among ourselves, but then we also have a composer, a dramaturg, all of the professionals from the opera that help us create this piece.
I'm sure it has been a learning process for all, inside our collective, but also with the collaboration with others, for everyone.
To compose Laïla was a very different process compared to everything else I've ever done before. I like to learn new things, and this has been a real learning curve, because none of it is composing in the traditional sense of the word.
So a big part of the sound design and the sound in the dome is a spatial sound, meaning that we have a 38.2 nGnách system in the dome. It's all around you. 3D spatial sounds means that there's no direction. Anything can happen anywhere.
We're working with really interesting technologies, so we get to do a really interesting projection mapping solution inside Laïla, and we're also using AI in a kind of new type of way that helps the people who come to Laïla interact with the artwork.
Every art form needs the traditional side, the legacy. We have to take care of the legacy, but we also have to make sure that there are new things that nobody has done ever before. And we also have to take the risk of some things not actually working out. So every new work is a risk in this sense. But if we don't take the risk, we're going to die, and the art form is going to die. It's going to dry out and lose its relevance. So the risk is well worth taking.
So that was the man himself. When he, Esa-Pekka Salonen, and you really have to take his words when he says something, it's true. When he became the artistic partner with the Finnish National Opera, he approached the artistic director, like he said, and then we started to think that what could we do, that we know we've been doing over 100 years great opera performances, good quality opera, in a traditional way, mostly, and ballet, of course. And then we thought that let's do something really wild and crazy. Let's do something completely new, and let's not rely ourselves that we can think outside of the opera box. Let's ask everybody what could be this great new thing that combines opera and new technology. So we got a private funding from a foundation, Jane and Aatos Erkko Foundation in Finland, for the initial money. And so we set up this umbrella project called Opera Beyond. And we have several sub-projects. How we started is that we had our first seminar in 2019, which I had a pleasure to host. And we had a competition, and we gave some basic storyline, some ideas, and some outlinings what we would like to have, like how long and the budget and certain ballpoints things, but pretty freely. So we get tons and tons of entries, and then we shortlisted, and 20 best candidates, best for this project, were chosen to become part of the Opera Beyond seminar. And so they were getting mentoring from Esa-Pekka Salonen, and that the Esa-Pekka was, of course, very important because he promised to compose the piece, whatever that, would be. And being the famous composer and conductor, so it was very alluring. And then Paula Vesala, who is a pop star, like a pop icon in Finland, and a film star, and a dramaturg, and a screenwriter, and whatnot, super lady, was also like you know, you get to work with these two, so what's not to love? So we get many entries, and then they were mentored. I was in a team of 3 people, and we were evaluating the so-called doability. Are these projects possible? And it was funny because then we had an international jury, and then Paula and Esa-Pekka, they were mentoring and all the candidates. And then when the jury told who they've chosen to be the winner, I was like, you gotta be kidding. And I looked back my notebook, and after their pitch, the only things I wrote, not possible. Like, too complicated. And I'm like, but it's not possible. And Esa-Pekka said, yeah, I think it's not possible, but it's worth of trying because it's so fascinating. And I was like, you're all mad, but let's do it. And so that's how we started with Laïla. And this was early summer of 2019, and then we started to workshop the idea, and we're supposed to premiere in the spring 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020, and COVID for Laïla. Laïla is very much of a COVID project. It was a curse and a blessing. Curse because of the well, I get to that later. But the blessing was that so many people, you know, so many artists, including Paula Vesala and Esa-Pekka Salonen, their gigs were cancelled because the world got shut. So they were working for us. So we had the luxury of having these mentors and creative team members just for ourselves. And so with the Eco Collective, we started to work on this. We have a skeleton of Laïla there, a very technical picture. So that's how it looks like in a tech rider. And I started to shop for a dome because after a certain time, I was, okay, we're going to need a dome, but you can buy domes. But then we couldn't find the dome we would have liked and that would have been suitable for us. So we started to think, okay, let's make one. And then all the time, we wanted to work hand in hand, old and new. And since we couldn't buy a dome, we decided to make a dome. And the support structure of the dome, the tent, it's birch bar, hand-carved birch bar from Lapland. A genius man, hand-carved from the birch. Then it's the tent, the fabric is also, it's hand-sewn, you know, for that structure, for the birch bars. And I was lucky because they're very busy professionals working for film and television, but also they got, you know, all the jobs got cancelled, so we could really take our time with it and make it perfect. Then the truss support there is basically, we also had a sound curtain, so it would really be immersive because no distraction coming from the outside. I'm just going to shortly walk you through Laïla, and I have a few slides which you can just, you know, at your own pace, you know, just go through. So you get some kind of an idea how it looked, and I try to tell you how it felt and why we did certain things the way we did. So first we thought it should be for everybody, no boundaries, it should be like no cultural or age or any kind of boundaries. Laïla is for everyone. And we didn't want to have a wearables of any kind, no headset, no this, no that. In the end, however, we ended up having a portable speaker around every visitor's neck hanging. So you walk into our small stage, that's what we had at the National Opera, and you were given then the portable speaker, and then you would go into that small lobby before the dome, and that's a recording booth that would activate when you would step in. And then you would get to choose among many words, your favorite words for the moment. And Laïla took 5 people at the time inside the dome. The experience was for, there's a happy producer there, for 17 minutes. So, and in the end, the chosen words for all visitors, all 5, would form a poetry, a nice poem in the end, sort of as a highlight. And this was something that, from the technological point of view, this was so high-tech that I could have never imagined in my wildest dream to be part of anything of the sort. And the first thing when we started to realize what kind of technology we need in order to show and tell what we want to show and tell, I went to the Aalto University and I was speaking to the map technology professors about the LiDARs, what kind of LiDARs do they use and what would be good for us, because we wanted to track every visitor when they entered the dome. And we wanted to be high-tech, but so that the tech doesn't show. So, okay, so we had these infrared and laser LiDARs. So we would track people. So immediately they would get an artificial intelligence identity, and they would have their own little light spot. And then Laïla was also learning by doing experience. So people usually, they got immediately that's me. And then when they started to move around and about, they started to attract other AR entities. And then if they would interact with other people, the AI would reward them by making lovely curves and shapes and whatnot. And then also the portable, here is the recording session going on. The portable speakers, they interacted with other portable speakers. So whenever you were facing another visitor, you would get special features, lovely things. And then you would understand at some point that, okay, whenever I'm collaborating with other people, I get more treats, I get more experiences. And so at the same time, it was personal experience, but then together you could create so much more. And there were 3 phases, like the dramaturg was such that this reflects our ideas about technology and artificial intellect. Oh, that's the name Laïla. Laïla has the AI, but that I guess you figured out long ago. So, we think that it would be great if technology would solve all our problems and make the world better. And at the same time, we are afraid that it will take over and we would have no control over it. And in Laïla, we try to reflect these sentiments, these ideas. And the first, because you get so many rewards whenever you go and explore and do things inside the dome. And also the music was such, it was composed by Esa-Pekka Salonen and it was recorded. So there was instruments from the National Opera's orchestra and then our chorus. And it functioned as like there was like a matrix. So within, it had layers. So within the system, depending how you moved around and about inside the dome, also the music would change. So the visuals and the music, everything would change. So each session was different, and it was different for each individual inside the dome. So 3 phases. First, it was this honeymooning. You were getting all these attractive AI entities to entertain you, and you would get nice sounds, and you would meet other visitors and get rewarded for that. And then it would go further and it would become like a fractal forest, I would say. And which for Finns, of course, it's the best place to be, forests in the world. And and the music, of course, supported that. And then Laïla started to fulfill all your dreams, and you were getting treats like in a candy shop. And then came the Ice Age, and everything froze and turned to black and white. And also the music was reflecting. It was like physically, because this Laïla was a haptic experience. We also had like the floor was moving a bit, and then you have the portable speaker. So it was around and inside you in every way. So then the mood changed, the experience changed, and things got dramatic. And then the idea was that people mostly, they kind of froze there. But then because they've already learned how Laïla worked, and that Laïla was always encouraging them to work together. So as soon as they got, over the shock, they started to collaborate again. And so like a new beginning started. And the music, it was this choral-like music, but then, of course, it changed a bit depending how the people move. And then flower explosion, beautiful colors, like all the good things in the world. So this is how it basically felt for me. But, and what was the idea? And then, of course, in the end, all the words, pre-recorded words, they form this poem, and you get like all the most beautiful. Also, we had recorded like giggles of children, or like small children whispering things like, "Don't be so afraid. This is fun," and "Be courageous," and this. And when a young child tells you these things, you're like, you're right. And so Laïla was serious, dramatic, humorous, beautiful, and but I think it was different for different people, and it was very well received.
Yes, I was going to ask Miia, because you've described it with great vividness, and it's my deep frustration that because of COVID, of course, I never saw it myself or experienced it, but we all, I can feel, want to go and do that right now. So actually, what did the audience feel react to, and actually how many people saw it? How did you do it in the end?
Well, in Finland we managed to do it. We just postponed it, and then we had a viewing. But because, well, first we thought it's going to take 6 people at the time in, and then, okay, COVID, 5. And the summer was safe time, so we performed it in the summer, all August. But because it took such a long time per session, we could barely have 3 sessions an hour. So even if we would run it like all day, it would be like 150 people, meaning like to have the same amount of people what we have in one night. In our main auditorium is seating for 1,300 people. So we would have to run Laïla 10 days non-stop. And so not so many people would see it, and it of course sold out. We have hundreds and hundreds of performances. But what was so lovely about it is that there were so many people who came back, because they wanted to know that what is it for me the next time. And some people, okay, now I know Laïla, and I know my way with Laïla, maybe I can play it. And they said that it was, each time it was different. Of course, there's a certain dramaturgy, and only so much changes can take place in the music, but it was different. And then you could also, I think it's, you learn things from yourself. Like it was very big learning experience for myself when I wanted to test it for someone, a visitor in a wheelchair, that how is it? Because you cannot just go wildly round and about there. So you have to be still in a one spot. And then one way of participating is to look at the others and see their enjoyment and see their collaboration. And that was it was very different, but very beautiful experience, not just trying to get all the candy from the shop. So anyway, Laïla was supposed to go to Asia. We had booked tour to Asia, Hong Kong and Seoul, and then it was supposed to tour in North America. And then we already had some discussions with certain European festivals. And the sad thing was that only the Finns and the people who traveled to Helsinki saw it. We even shipped it to Hong Kong. We built it, we tested it. And then the management of the Hong Kong Art Festival and their selected guests had the preview. And then COVID situation got worse and China shut down once again. So, like I said, COVID was cursed and a blessing. Cursed because we couldn't tour with Laïla, so the lifespan was much shorter than what we expected. And also that when making Laïla, we had to postpone, not just for COVID's sake, but because China was closed. We couldn't even get computer parts. We couldn't buy. My money was not good because we just, couldn't get the technology. But Laïla taught us many lessons, and I think there will be a future for Laïla. And Laïla is very complex, and I think that if there's future and there are plans that we could give the dome and the technology while it's still good and working for people who cannot afford the kind of technology with lesser resources like students, that what they would do with those materials, how they would explore, the world with these tools, and I think that would be interesting.
Miia, thanks. We'll come back to the legacy of the project because, clearly it should have one and does have one. But what was the thing that most changed you in doing Laïla?
Before Laïla, I was a person who could barely write email and use a cellular telephone. So, yeah. So Laïla made me and us curious and courageous. And the whole idea with Laïla, old and new, and art, classical art and technology, is like we all have something to offer. So like collaborating, like that was Laïla tried to push us to do, work with the others, collaborate. So that's what I learned from Laïla also. And I don't have to be, there are difficulties if you have no idea of the content or the technology or something to manage the project. But it taught me that there are people, and then there are people, and you can work with all people, and together you can achieve something. Like you have so much to give to one another. So yeah, Laïla was a good teacher.
So it sounds like both for the audience and for you, it was an exchange and a growth project, which is wonderful. We'll come back to you later, but let's press on. And now for something completely different. James and Irish National Opera. The stage is yours.
Thanks very much, Peter. Hi, I'm James Bingham, Studio and Outreach Producer, Irish National Opera. Just a brief word on Irish National Opera. We are a national opera production company based in Ireland, as the title indicates, but quite different to Finnish National Opera in the sense that we're a very young company. We've only been around for 5 years. We don't have our own opera house. We don't have our own permanent orchestra or chorus. We're very much a startup company in comparison to the organisations like Finnish National Opera. So coming at this at a very, very different angle. And so therefore our priorities and concerns about what we want to do in the area of digital are very, very different for the landscape that we have in Ireland culturally. We decided to produce Out of the Ordinary, or nGnách, to give it its Irish title, largely to do with the fact that we take the remit of national very seriously at Irish National Opera. It's very easy for an organisation like INO to simply serve Dublin, Cork a little bit, and produce wonderful operas and have a nice time doing that. But we want to make sure we're reaching out to the country as a whole. And the resources available for theatre spaces simply aren't there for us to do traditional opera in that way. There are many small theatre spaces, but certainly there aren't many that have orchestra pits, meaning you are quite limited in what you can do there. And we do bring shows on tour there. We brought Olivier award-winning shows touring around of earlier repertoire. Sort of, we're doing quite a bit of Vivaldi in that way. But we wanted to do something that was out of the ordinary, and decided to explore the area of VR. So Out of the Ordinary is the world's first virtual reality community opera. I mean, I'm pretty certain. I'm never totally certain with the world first, but I've been saying it for 4 years now, and nobody's corrected me. So I think we've passed the time where correction can come up. To break that down, when I say a virtual reality opera, I mean an opera that's experienced on a VR headset. That's been created in a video game engine, Unreal. Some of you might be familiar with. A lot of video games are made through that particular engine. So you experience it on a headset. When you come and see our show, you're brought into a space. You're met with a facilitator who will put a headset on you and will be with you through that whole process. It's about 20 minutes long, and you can wander around the space, the virtual space, and interact with the story as it unfolds. The community side of things is because it's a community opera in the sense it's been produced by both professional and non-professional artists. So we worked with communities from across Ireland. We thought for a piece that was as disparate as this, we wanted to work with quite disparate groups. So we were working with groups not far from Dublin in a region called Tala, which is just on the suburbs of Dublin, with a local theatre there called the Civic, with some of their local residents. And we were also working out on the far reaches of Ireland, off the coast of Ireland, small collection of islands called the Aran Islands, and one in particular, Inishmion, which is extremely rural, in an area known as the Gaeltacht, meaning that the first language spoken there is Irish. So many of these people never met in person. There was over 100 people working on this in all different facets of its creative process. And the reason why we do community opera is not for us to virtue signal or to show somehow that we are trying to be inclusive by symbolizing certain things. We do it because I think it's quite interesting to bring new voices into opera. And by virtue of handing over the reins, you can create something that is quite cutting edge from a cultural point of view. And I'm really, really interested in that kind of work. Throwing virtual reality in that, I think, really throws everything up in the air and creates this question of, we don't really know what this looks like, and how is this going to manifest itself, is a journey that we can all kind of discover together, which was really exciting. So they were involved, these participants, in the creation of the music and how it sounded, how the visual aesthetics looked. They wrote the story with our team of professional artists. We even had them in motion capture suits. There's sequences where you're underwater and there's jellyfish and fish swimming around, and the movements of those fish are data that was collected from movement workshops that we did in Rococo suits. So throwing all these different bits of participation in created this collective idea, which became Out of the Ordinary. It tells the story very briefly of a collection of people who are displaced and are trying to find new land, and they encounter a spirit known as Dale, and are plunged underwater, find new land, and have to make a decision about how they interact with that land. So there's multiple different endings to the piece depending on how you interact with it. And I think we've got a video actually of some of the community participants and their response to the piece.
I started off doing a creative writing course, and then from then we just got more and more involved in it.
I love the writing, and I love the music part of it as well. Creating music through using instruments at home, and I also loved working with the other people and discussing ideas and being introduced to opera as well. It's an art form that I've come to appreciate.
I had just very little experience of opera beforehand. It wasn't something I was familiar with, so I wanted to kind of see what was involved in it, and it transformed the whole opera experience for me, having seen what goes into it and how they're put together.
This thing of having to feel you're separate from the creative artist doesn't necessarily have to apply, that we're all creative in our own ways, and it's really just a case of unlocking that within you and exploring it a little bit and having a little bit of confidence that you can contribute and you're not just that onlooker as you felt you were at the beginning, that it becomes an immersive process and you realise everybody has something to give.
During one of the sessions where we were all together for the choir, I think I might have dropped that I played the harp, and now I am also playing the harp in the opera.
I was introduced to a lot of things that I hadn't been introduced before to, like graphics and music and creating music without instruments.
To start creating music from ordinary kitchen implements, etc., was very unusual. It introduced a new type of musical form to me, really. I had never thought of music as being that dissonant, that you could just put together abstract sounds and rather than just looking at melody in the traditional sense.
It's been a learning curve. I had no idea about virtual reality. I'd never worn a headset before. When we had the opportunity to wear the suit and the headset a few months ago, I was in my element. I just loved every bit of it.
I played accordion in the production, and I was involved in the community workshops and the animation sequences.
More than just coming passively looking at something, you're actually taking part in it. You feel sensations, bodily sensations during it as well, and it takes you on a journey, and yeah, it's really good.
Well, opera is simply a form of storytelling, and anybody likes a good story, so I think you should go along and experience it.
It was amazing. I loved all of the colours, and I loved seeing and hearing the parts that we contribute as the community being in there. Like when I heard my harp bit, I was like very chuffed. I was very, very happy to hear myself in it.
I think just go in and enjoy the experience. It's been a huge amount of work for so many people, but I think it's quite beautiful and it's quite moving and striking, so go ahead and enjoy it.
So there you are, that's Out of the Ordinary nGnách. The piece is touring around to various venues. There's a few kind of shots of some of the locations that you find yourself in as you travel through the world with Nalva, the character that you play in the role over the course of it. I do think that virtual reality has storytelling capabilities that are pretty novel and are yet to be fully realised. I certainly think I've learnt a huge amount from the work we've done and storytelling capabilities as a result of the medium that will be interesting to explore. But it's an incredibly mobile piece. It's simply the headsets and various islands that you stand on and can be pretty much performed in any space, such as this one here. And that's our intention with it, and we're continuing to bring it round Ireland and internationally. Thanks very much.
Thanks, James. Sort of a couple of questions. You two had a composer, though, and a very good one, living
Indeed,
in New York.
yeah,
Perhaps just talk a bit about that and the found music and the community engagement, how the score was generated.
Absolutely, yeah. So Finola Merivale was a composer for this, Irish composer, but based in New York. I think what was an interesting kind of side effect of COVID. We began the process of COVID. We all began the process of COVID in March 22, in March 20. But we began the project itself the January before. So we had plans in place that immediately were moved around accordingly. So there was very much an idea that Finola would be back and forth across the year, meeting with the communities. But it completely changed how we were going to approach engaging with communities, what that ask would be. And we spent a lot of time actually thinking about how do you recruit people to something like this? Because if you come up to someone who's never had any experience in opera or had any kind of creative experience in that sort of context before, and you say, we'd like you to contribute to the world's first virtual reality community opera, what would you like it to be about and how would you like it to sound? That's, as a question, is a bit absurd, and is, I think, would for most people leave them quite marooned. So we began the process actually first by looking through writing workshops and advertising these as something that was on Zoom. It was a weekly session, and it was part of this far larger project that involved virtual reality, and eventually in 2 years' time there was going to be this virtual reality opera made. But don't worry about that right now. Come along each week and have a go and get your creative juices flowing and see what happens. And we built relationships that way. And some people there stayed for those workshops and we didn't see them again. And some people carried on and stayed with us for several years and were absolutely instrumental as part of that. So everybody had their own journey as part of that and could put in as much as they felt comfortable to. And I think it's very important as part of that process that people have that agency to withdraw when they feel they need to and also put more in. So by the time we got to FEDORA, FEDORA ran a series of different workshops, still within this COVID context, about gathering sounds. So we had one workshop which was around, what sounds can you make with your body other than singing? And can we collect those? And can we had this platform as part of the project. There was funding through the Horizon program for this alongside FEDORA's very generous funding, which allowed for this this sort of social network space called the co-creation space, where material was uploaded from these workshops. We found instruments, made instruments in the house, and people created compositions out of those. What I thought was really lovely as well about the performance side of things, when FEDORA shaped all this, and there was soundscapes in which people had contributed that were added into these things, and through the sounds and the ideas that were created in those workshops, that was the stimulus for FEDORA's creation. But when we got to the performance side, the piece was written for a small professional chamber ensemble, 2 professional singers, as you probably heard in that clip there, but then a community choir, and then these additional contributions from individuals that we've met along the way, like Lara in that video who played the harp. Now, usually if you were to do a performance with a professional chamber ensemble playing quite difficult music and also throw in a 14-year-old girl playing the harp, who is a sort of grade 4 level or grade 5 level and is progressing at her own pace, well, that would be putting her in quite an unfair position, because it's putting a lot of pressure on that individual to really, really perform. And what was great was we were doing these various bits of recording, and we were recording in one place, this professional ensemble, and then we were bringing in Lara and sitting down with her and taking her through this process. You know, she came into that first recording session and was really nervous about the fact that she would have to wait for 32 bars and then play. And we said, no, don't worry, it's fine. We'll start at the bit where you start playing. We don't need to worry about the rest of that. And the music could be written in this context that was very straightforward for those individuals and what they needed to make sure they could bring the very best version of themselves to the performance, which I thought was really, really lovely.
That's really interesting, James, because I think what's coming out so far is that the community and the mutual learning of these projects is quite different to normal process. And I think, and we're just coming on to Sound Voice in a second, that sense of a connection with an audience and involvement with a community is something which is quite different and quite profound. And it's interesting you mentioned COVID blessing and curse, because of course activating that social network through digital became almost an organic part of the process, and then an enabling part. And when it came to performance, just before we move on, what was the reaction of the audience, and who were the audience in the places who have so far seen it and engaged with it?
I never tire of actually sitting in performances. We always have 2 facilitators in for every show, partly to help make sure people, when they're in that experience, are comfortable and their overriding thing is not my glasses steamed up or something like that, but also to make sure people are safe within the headsets and keep an eye on them. And I've taken on that role a number of times, and I still really look forward to it each time, because everybody responds in a very, very different way. There's something about virtual reality, even though you know that you are here in this room in Prague, but you're thrown underwater, and there's something in your brain that tells you, no, I am underwater. and seeing people kind of experience that, and everybody approaches it in a different way. We have some people who will sit there very, very quietly. We have some people who will run straight off the mat and we have to bring them back on. We've had people get onto their belly and start swimming in the space. People respond in all these different ways. And what's also really lovely is it comes back to this sense of community, because people take the headsets off after and they all want to talk to one another, even if they've not met one another. If it's 6 strangers in the room, there's this discussion that just seems to happen after, and the facilitators sort of will kind of chip in with additional information, but it was never something that we forced. It was never anything that we said, okay, there's going to be a sort of debrief session at the end. But there's always a discussion every time, which is, I think, is really lovely.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much. We'll come back to both of you in a moment. But now, Thomas in London, thank you for waiting. And maybe you'd briefly also introduce yourself, because you are, in fact, a medical doctor, unlike these us arty types here. And then if you could introduce Sound Voice and carry on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, will do. I mean, I was fascinating to hear about the other projects, and I hope the audience is as well, because this is quite impressive, to say the least. I'm indeed a medical doctor in ear, nose, and throat. I've been a singer from very young, almost in a boys' choir, and that opened up the world of music, the world of connecting to other people. I've got Dutch twang. I'm Flemish. I'm from Belgium originally. There's not a lot of people who speak Dutch in the world, so from very young onwards, I had to explain myself in all sorts of body language, etc. when you are working internationally. But I soon realized that there's a big power in the music, music to connect, which was very obvious in the previous chat from the Irish National Opera. Music can connect people. It's such a powerful thing. And music can even work for people who struggle with voice, who have problems with voice pathology. And this is what Sound Voice is all about. And I would like to start with a small introductory video, and then we'll crack on from there.
I know. My voice, feel the song I sing in the strength of my arms when I hold you. Listen carefully, I will whisper. Let me sing to you in my dreams. Let me sing to you my story. I know this is my voice, and it sounds to me like my love and soul.
Take anything.
I know now I can take
anything. Please don't take my.
This is my voice. My voice. This is how I sound now.
Thomas, thank you. That's wonderful. I mean, I would just say that having experienced it, it is a profoundly emotional experience. I think that Hannah's lived experience, you talked quite a bit about lived experience, that family, you know, her father, and it pushes you to think about something that you don't really think much about, because it's something that we all share, and that sense of loss of an organ or is quite amazing. I think that I'd be interested in. I asked the question of Miia. What was the thing that Sound Voice has most changed for you in being involved with it, as a person, maybe as a physician as well? Thank you. Well, I think thanks all of you for sharing. And I think what's pretty clear, I hope is super clear now, is how these digital projects are different. They are connecting with people in a completely different way. And that while the technology is important, I mean crucial, it's not perhaps the initial motivating factor, because what they all become about in different ways is storytelling and human connection. And then there's a kind of freedom and release that comes with that, which is quite different from a conventional performance in which you are receiving, but not necessarily transmitting. So I'd like to talk a bit more about that and talk about the kind of the potential onward journeys, because let's start back to Miia. You had a apparently impossible project which became possible. It certainly was not technologically straightforward. And we've talked a bit about the fact that the hiccup of COVID, if you like. But what do you think were the insights, going back to those people who did experience it, that might influence the future direction for Finnish National Opera and Ballet in connecting with audiences, different audiences, by the way? Did different people come? What did you learn from those audience experiences and feedback?
Laïla, we were hoping that Laïla would attract different audience, new audience that would not necessarily come to see traditional opera or ballet, and that happened. And we were thinking because of COVID, we actually made Laïla in an empty television studio close to the Helsinki-Vantaa airport. And then we talked there long and hard that we would like to bring it to the National Opera, but then that would the attraction of the new media, the new technology, new kind of artwork be strong enough, or will just the fact that it's inside the opera house be like, no, not for me? So, but we, however, it took place there, and we got so much new audience, and I think there were a few things that were very important to them. They had the agency, like what also James was talking about, like they felt great that they could, something is not just poured over them, but they have agency. They can do things themselves. They are part of the artwork, and for many that's something they do already with like video games. So it's art, but they are in control to a certain extent. And then maybe, because it changed also how they started to see the opera as an institution and art form. So these two can be opera. And for certain segment of our audience, Laïla audience, we were no longer that dusty, old-fashioned, conservative. So these two can be opera, and this is the whole point of Opera Beyond. But then also to our some maybe more conservative customers, and we tend to get like all age groups and all different kinds of people in the normal operas and ballets, which is wonderful. But for many, this was the first time they were experiencing the new technology, and because it didn't show really, I mean, just the portable speaker, but that's not so high tech, so that they didn't see it. So they were no longer afraid of the new technology because they understood that it can just serve something that it's nice and pleasant. And so perhaps they were, I don't want to sound arrogant, I'm going to, so I'm just going to say it. So maybe they were no longer so intimidated by the new technology or the idea of new technology and technology blending with a classical art form, old art form. And for us also, because like the way I explain Laïla is like how we plan that this is the experience, but of course everybody's like you said too, that it's unique, it's different for each and every one, and then people when they talk about it they have it a little bit differently, and that's interesting, and there's like a new thing they can share and talk about. So is that it's like this is also something I learned, that because when you have an opera performance, there it is, and then you receive it the way you receive it, and there's no right way and wrong way, and it's always a unique experience, you know, and there are many factors why you receive certain artwork the way you do, and this is no different. And this was script, and of course there was the agency and the collaboration with others, but it was the way people talked about it. And so you cannot get art wrong, regardless of what kind of art it is. And it was fascinating, like to hear how much people have loved Laïla, and the stories, what they thought about it. They were so different. And I was like, wow, this is beautiful.
That's the quote of the session. You cannot get art wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So James, this is now, you had the ambition was to be national, to be out there. Where have you been, and what was that reaction actually? And yes, in both the communities that created it and those people who have experienced it. And does it, for you, give any pointers towards new ways?
Yeah, it's we've been to all corners of Ireland at present, and we've also been abroad for smaller scale kind of industry sort of screenings at present. And there's a number of other dates sort of coming up over the course of the next year. The places where we found it's gone to actually, which has been really lovely, has been a lot of small scale festivals and venues that typically would not be able to collaborate with us, and that's been really, really great. We've been able to start conversations with parts of the country and with producers who Irish National Opera just would never be on their list, and actually opera full stop would never be on their list, because I mean partly I think because opera is expensive, but also because there's a perception that opera is expensive as well, when it doesn't necessarily always have to be. So it's been really, really wonderful to have to see that happen. It's also been interesting, actually. The piece has been in development as well over the course of that time. There has been updates to it as we've been going, and it's been great to see actually how those reactions have changed with people as they've come along to it. In terms of kind of what is next and the legacy of this, one question I often get asked, which is I suppose is a sort of slightly more reductive version of what you're asking there, is when's your next VR opera, or what's because I think it's based on this assumption sometimes that you have the hardware, but actually the hardware is often not the most expensive part of it. It's the human time that gets put into producing these things, and these days virtual reality headsets are a lot more affordable, and if we were to do another virtual reality opera, that equipment would be out of date very soon, because we all know how frequently new iPhones come out, and it's exactly the same with VR headsets. We may well do another one, but I think it would be because we have a good reason to do so. One thing I think which has been really great for Irish National Opera, is that it's allowed us. I think it has confirmed something that I'm seeing a change across the industry more broadly, and I think Finnish National Opera is actually a really great example of this, is that opera companies have to be more like Swiss Army knives these days. You can't just simply produce great big repertoire on your main stage and assume that that's going to be enough. You have to try new approaches and take those risks, like Esa-Pekka Salonen was saying earlier. Those sorts of risks are important, and to continue to try and continue to fail and sometimes succeed, I think is really, really important. We're working with FEDORA again on another project that's developing an app called Isolde at present, which is to do with projection on the wall. We call it street art opera is the word, and we've been doing these installations quite a bit around Ireland, with the idea that people are presented with Bluetooth headphones to experience these projections, because speakers in public spaces always come with problems, not least they're annoying to those who don't want to enjoy the opera. We've been working in that way, but this new app that we're developing, Isolde, is about synchronizing the video with your own phone, so you can bring your own headphones, plug in and experience the piece, and there doesn't need to be anybody there. The piece can be set up, a QR code, and the thing can be running. I don't think, unless projects like Out of the Ordinary had succeeded, and other similar projects where we've been trying smaller scale or more experimental things, that we would have gone on to do things like Isolde. And I think they're really, really important to the future of opera.
Back to you, Thomas. Thanks for staying with us. A question I realise I didn't ask you, and it's super important, is that you were well advanced with the initial Sound Voice project. I'd just like you to talk a little bit about what the FEDORA money has allowed you to do and where the project's actually going next, because that's quite interesting. I think you might well be able to take this into hospitals and so forth, which is quite a transformative development.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you are going to put us in touch with James, so we can use that QR code and the project he's working on at some point. No, I'm joking. But I think the FEDORA prize, Lots of recognition, lots of doors that open. It does help you have a stronger knock on the door, if you know what I mean. It allowed us to change the experience, if you want to help it with a headphone and LED experience, which helps with the accessibility, like James stepped on as well. Because one of the things that we did notice is that there is push, there is innovation, there is creativity. I mean, if there's any sector where there should be creativity, it's the arts world. There's plenty of that, but when you develop these things, they are risky as well, but it doesn't really fit, or there's not enough room in the programming of venues or institutions. It's not the thing they think of in their organizational meetings, etc. But they also struggle to with the technology and the support or the specialized care that it takes. So I think that's where the FEDORA platform will play a vital role in as well, and keep on pushing those boundaries and keeping pushing it on their agenda as well. And for us personally, yeah, we wanted to. We learned of our experience how you can transform a patient, a participant into a performer, next step. But we also wanted to do something similar with different venues, like hospitals. They can become a satellite, if you want, from the artistic venue. And that's an interesting journey. Bring the art to them, not just the people who are in the hospital for medical reasons, but the whole family who's working in their own different people, different roles, like a giant army of aunts, if you want. Fascinating, and this, yeah, let's get them involved as well in this experience, and not just hospitals. I mean, there's plenty of different end goals or different places where we can bring this to, and definitely the FEDORA platform prize has helped us in this. Also, in the way we thought about this, and in problem solving, it was a help, but it just helped us to reassess, and that is also vital in our development. Reflect and adapt.
Great, thank you very much. Now we're coming towards the close. There are a few minutes left. So, does anyone want to ask any questions of our distinguished and diverse panel? Anything comes to mind? If not, I've got one or two more up my sleeve, of course. Nobody at the moment? Well, one thing I just want to sort of say and talk about is that one of the purposes of doing this session, and in its digital form, is to try and actually raise awareness of this prize. Because, as Thomas is saying, it's not insignificant financially, €50,000. But one of the things we do want to try and do is to get lots of organisations thinking more broadly, and lots of artists, because, you know, the artists, I mean, Hannah was, that project Sound Voice was artist-led, and actually all of these projects are artist-led in different ways, while being community or engaging with large and diverse groups of people. It's also to try and get people thinking in a cross-disciplinary fashion. Technology and artists. As I say, this whole idea of piecing together a jigsaw. We've all got some of the pieces, but we can make a complete and sometimes quite different picture. So ask number one from me is, if you know of anybody, any artist, any organisation who you think might be interested in pitching in, then please do let them know. And I think also from me, the message is, you might listen to these three extraordinary stories, which are all completely different, and think, my goodness, that's really too complicated for me. We couldn't possibly afford it. Well, I dare say all of you probably thought that at the beginning. James, yeah? I mean,
Yeah, I do actually remember the moment we received the funding, and I had those two waves of emotion. The first was, yes, we've got the funding, and then immediately after was, oh no, we've got the funding. This sort of panic of this of I've actually got to deliver this now. But you know, you put that to one side, and one thing I will say actually about FEDORA. Is Peter's right that the 50,000 that's received is no insignificant sum, and has been hugely beneficial to the development of Out of the Ordinary, and has meant we've been able to push the project into places which otherwise we wouldn't have been able to. But on top of that, I think it goes further than that, in the sense that you have international advocates for your project. It's given Irish National Opera, the collaborations that we've had with FEDORA, a chance to share our work at an international level, to make new partnerships and develop the work we do. And I think that side of things is as important. And I think having a diversity of different organisations, we're three very different organisations here, sat here, I think is sort of indication that really any sort of organisation can consider this as a viable option for the project.
I think, sorry, Miia, you go ahead.
Yeah, just I agree just about everything, because and the money, of course, it helped us connect with like internationally and make further plans, but it was more than the money. It made us relevant in the eye of so many different parties, and it gave us sort of a reassurance that we're on the right path and that we're doing something right and that we should continue. And so we did. Now we have the constant Opera Beyond platform, like webinars, and we're about to, now the next one, at the end of the year, hard to say now, November, December, we're working on a new web page and new platform. So, but we have this, thanks to FEDORA again, we have this XR stage tool, which we, in the beginning, we thought it would be like a technical tool for stage design. And now it's so much more. It is also an artistic tool, and Laïla and the recognition from FEDORA and what that made us really courageous, and we don't have prejudices, and I think we have started to see outside the opera box ourselves, and all these new collaborations and our place in the society so much wider than before this has given us a new drive. And although we don't run a digital like project, we don't have a staff for it, but it's incorporated, it's now inside our organization. It has changed us and also made us a different partner.
Great, thank you. And just to say, I think this is really important. We talk about new technology. Well, a lot of this technology isn't new, actually, is the reality. We all have it in our pockets. I think empowering that would be a really good thing. Arno.
This is not, yes, Arno Kronwall. I used to be the head of music at TV1 in YLE, and an independent producer and director, been in this business very long, and I'm just counting that I've been in Golden Prague from 1976 first time, and since then between 40 and 45 times. Always lovely to come to Prague. But I just regret that we have so little audience here, because this was so important and interesting also for me. Of course, I'm more conservative than you in many ways. I can't neglect that, but or say that it's not true, but it's true. But the point is that this was so interesting, and I hope that there will be a good report to our colleagues, so that Katarina, when you are doing the reports with your team, this should be read by everyone in IMZ members, because this was so creative and you all were so good in London and in Prague, and I really enjoyed, I have to say. And if you don't mind, I'm going to have a beherovka for all of you. Thank you very much.
Oh no, thank you for your generous comment. And can I just say, we're feeling exactly the same thing. I think I just say, Esa-Pekka is right. We have to change. None of us is saying live performance won't be the extraordinary thing that it always is, because without live performance, we are dead. But without the rest of it, we are too. I think from thinking of working with Katarina on this, the IMZ2, television, media, has to change. This is a different world in a very, very good way. Storytelling, community, connection, and emotion are all there. You have to have those things. These tools are just our servants in a good way. But to get that message out there, so please go out there and proselytize. We need you all to be evangelists. I have 3 wonderful ones here. And thank you for your warm support and for being here. Thomas, thank you so much. And absolutely, James, Miia, Diandra, thank you very much indeed. And have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And please reach out if you know any interesting projects or yourself are working on something, of course, and please spread the word. We'll be very happy to connect and to, yeah, thank you very much.